Hey everybody, welcome back to an episode of the 3 Count. I'm second place champion and face of the 3 Count Mafia, War Machine MJ. And I'm here today to talk about NXT and NXT UK. Now, you know how this program goes, or at least you should know now. I'm going to go ahead and start with the UK brand first, given that it feels the least consequential compared to NXT, since everybody's got their eyes on NXT as well as AEW. You know, we are in week 3 of the Wednesday Night Wars. So let's go ahead and kick things off with Ilya Dragunov making his return to the ring after, being on the shelf since his match against Cesaro at TakeOver Cardiff. He faced off against who he was supposed to face off with a couple weeks ago in Saxton Huxley. Of course, it was a very back and forth affair as Ilya Dragunov looked to shake off some of the ring rust he got while on the shelf. Mid-match, however, Alexander Wolf of Imperium stood on the ramp to monitor Dragunov's progress. And when Ilya Dragunov got the win with the actually, what is it called? Torpedo Moscow, which is just like a torpedo headbutt. Dragunov finally caught wind of Alexander Wolf, stepped out to the ring, and was, jaw-jacking with him when Imperium's music kicked up, and Fabian Eichner and Marcel Barthel joined Wolf on the stage. And Ilya Dragunov was squaring up like he was ready to fight them. And Barcel and Eichner just kind of walked past him. And while Dragunov was wondering what just happened, he turns and looks at Wolf, who's just like, come on, let's have a chat. Come on. So yeah, it will be interesting to see what they talk about. Next, speaking of Imperium, Eichner and Barcel had a really get you right there. Anyway, had a match against the Hunt, Wild Boar, and of course the Primate. After their wild altercation last week, and despite the primal instincts of the Hunt, they could not get the Hunt done as Imperium secured the victory and essentially swept the Hunt out of the ring. Next, we had one-on-one competition in the women's division as Xia Brookside took on the Nina Samuels Show. This was a pretty decent match. Xia Brookside got the win with a roll-up, thus stopping the Nina Samuels Show. Yeah. Next, we had Jordan Devlin coming out and explaining all of his jaw-jacking the week prior, basically backing up the claims that he's arrogant. And he bit back by simply saying, the word arrogant implies that someone thinks they're better than they really are, but Jordan Devlin believes every inch of his hype. And thus he called out the Bomber. And when Dave Mastiff finally climbed in the ring and started to talk, Devlin sucker punched him, tried the devil inside, but Dave Mastiff wasn't budging. In fact, he laid out the Irish Ace with a senton, thus sending the Ace packing. So it's the last we've seen of those two. And finally, in the main event... Oh, wait. I'm sorry. It was announced next week that... there's not a news bit for this anyway. But it was announced next week that... Trent Seven and... I'm blanking on names. Sorry, it's still early in the morning. Trent Seven and Noam Dar would finally, finally beat the holy hell out of each other. Anyway, and in the main event, it was Gallus, Mark Coffey, and Wolfgang taking on Flash Morgan Webster and Mark Andrews for the NXT UK Tag Team titles. Those pristine, beautiful looking belts. And this was one hell of a match. It pretty much rivaled their rematch with Grizzled, the rematch against Grizzled Young Vets and Mark Andrews and Flash Morgan Webster. This was a bang-up match from bell to bell. Joe Coffey was on the stage. He didn't get involved, but they just cut back to him every now and again, and you just saw, the tide of emotions that came over him throughout the match. But in the end, Mark Coffey and Wolfgang were successful in taking the NXT UK titles, and now the NXT UK tag division, as well as NXT UK itself, is now Gallus, or at least the division, the brand is one step closer to being Gallus. Anyway, that's it for NXT UK. Next we go to NXT. We kicked off the show with Angel Garza taking on the returning Tommaso Ciampa. Now, this match got set up last week when Tommaso Ciampa came to the ring to basically send a message to the Undisputed Era. He came backstage, and when Kathy Kelly tried to interviewed him, Angel Garza interrupted, basically saying, "Why would you talk? Why are you trying to talk to him instead of me?" So Kathy Kelly ignored him, tried to get words with Tommaso Ciampa. Angel Garza pops up once again, starts speaking in Spanish, and then Tommaso Ciampa just decks him. And then Kathy Kelly asked, "What did he say?" He's just like, "Oh." So this match was made official as of last week. And Tommaso Ciampa hasn't lost one step. He was just beating Garza all over the ring, and when Garza did his famous breakaway pants gimmick, Ciampa lost it, and he went Ric Flair on them pants and just beat the holy tar out of him. He threw him up against the rope, started kicking them. He threw him at the bottom turnbuckle, did a running knee. It was great. It was fantastic. And this, just kind of angered Angel Garza. Garza was distracted long enough for Ciampa to hit the apron DDT for the win. However, it was, it's called the Widow's Bell. That's pretty cool. Anyway, afterwards, the Undisputed Era flocked to the ring. And of course, Tommaso Ciampa grabbing a chair and his lucky crutch, basically sat there in defense mode, ready to strike. When Adam Cole motions to Kyle O'Reilly to go over to the announce team, and then he just kind of flicks a thumb drive at Marlo Ronaldo, and then the Undisputed Era just kind of walk off. Come back from commercial, they display the contents of said flash drive, and it just wound up the Undisputed Era's message to Ciampa and Balor and the rest of the people gunning for their belts, because they took out the Velveteen Dream. They beat the absolute hell out of him, just left him laying there, and then smashed his trademark glasses. A little later on, William Regal, seeing that, was obviously incensed, but he wasn't going to let the Undisputed Era have its way. So rather than let Roderick Strong go unchallenged for the North American title. He said that the new number one contender for the North American title would be decided between Keith Lee and Donovan Dijakovic. Winner gets a shot at Roderick Strong next week because, well, let's just face it, Velveteen Dream got his ass beat way too severe to mount a comeback. Anyway, next up, we had a tag team in the NXT ranks as Imperium's Fabian Eichner and Marcel Barthel, two men that are licensed to print money, took on Oney Lorcan and Danny Burch in another hard-hitting smash-mouth affair. However, the Brit-American combo could not get the job done against Imperium. They won with... whoa. Yeah, it doesn't say. Yeah, of course, they got the win over Lorcan and Birch, and Alexander Wolf was present at ringside. Next, we had Little Miss Io Shirai, the badass baby girl in black, with them crisp moonsaults. So crisp. They're like celery. They got a good snap to them. Anyway, she took on the rechristened Caden Carter. Of course, Caden Carter, as you know, was Lacey Lane. It was a nice little match. However, Io Shirai made short work of the Neon Dynamo Warrior, because she's got neon hair. Afterwards, she started dropping some names. Said names involved Bianca Belair and Shayna Baszler, and of course Rhea Ripley. Basically, she said she doesn't care about Bianca, she doesn't care about Rhea, she just cares about Shayna. Of course, that prompted Rhea Ripley to come out there. And she basically threatened Little Miss Shirai, saying, I don't have a problem with you, but if you drop my name one more time, I got no problem shutting you up. Next, we had the aforementioned rematch of a rematch between two Goliaths, aka Donovan Dijakovic and Keith Lee. These two, once again, just put on an absolute barn burner of a match. They beat the absolute hell out of each other, doing things that men their size should not be doing. However, there was no winner because Roderick Strong got involved, costing both of them the victory and a shot at his North American title. Almost immediately after Roderick Strong was basking in his work, William Regal was on the crow's nest declaring that he didn't get his way, sunshine. Instead, it's going to be a triple threat next week. Roderick Strong will defend against Keith Lee and Dijakovic. After the match, while William Regal was walking backstage, the rest of the Undisputed Era just started howling at him about how this is unfair, just yakking at him, and William Regal just no-sold it. Next, we had Matt Riddle taking on Bronson Reed, which, again, another hard-hitting affair. As these two just beat the absolute hell out of each other. But Matt Riddle got the victory with Bro Derek. I get the joke, but I don't know what... I forget what the finisher was. Anyway, after the match, he showed respect to Bronson Reed. So a nice little showmanship, basically. It's Matt Riddle bouncing back from his bittersweet loss to Adam Cole. Next, we had Tegan Nox taking on Tainara Conti, and this was a fantastic match because Tainara Conti's getting a lot better by leaps and bounds. She is fantastic. Her character work is just impeccable. But she could not muster against the heart and soul of Tegan Nox, who put her away with Of course, the shiniest wizard, her claim to fame. Afterwards, when she was getting interviewed by Kathy Kelly, before she could say a word, out comes Dakota Kai, who the two of them are just, besties, hugged each other, and, it was a nice moment. Then came out the Queen of Spades and her horsewomen, just kind of sizing up the competition, laughing Tegan Knox off as no threat. And rightfully told her so. Basically said, if you step in the ring, well, I'm afraid you're running out of parts to cripple. Just taking shots at her two misfortunes. Next, it was announced that next week we're getting Bianca Belair versus Rhea Ripley. Of course, we got a fantastic Bianca Belair video package where she basically said, you basically called Rhea Ripley a nightmare, a badass, but she can't think for 1 second that she can beat the EST of NXT. Afterwards, seeking retribution for last week, Boa decided to take on Killian Dane. And Dane promptly murdered him. Figuratively, not literally. As Killian Dane beat him. Handily. And of course, as he was going to the back, he crossed paths with the bruiserweight Pete Dunne, who, Killian Dane got in his face, was basically calling him out. He got close enough, and Pete Dunne just snapped his fingers, and then we come back from commercial, and there was the match. There was Pete Dunne's match against Damian Priest. And, his motivations is basically, I want to live in infamy, so I took a page from your book and made a name for myself. That was one of our old running jokes, is every time Pete Dunne would pop up, I'd put on a stupid British accent and say, make a name for myself. Either way, this was a fantastic match. However, the end came when mid-referee distraction, Damian Priest went low, kicked Pete Dunne right in the business, and put him away with, put him away with the Reckoning. So yeah, Damian Priest is, of course, going to live in infamy with a tainted victory over the former NXT UK champion. So yeah, thus ends another episode of 205 Live. Oh, sorry, that's other notes. NXT. One note to make for NXT. Kushida is going to be out for a little bit because he's got a hairline fracture that was aggravated on his wrist during his match against Walter. That's why half of his moveset was stunted. That's why he didn't do any springboard stuff. So, yeah. Pluck time. You know how this goes. If you miss Rod's opinions but hate his ugly face, he has a podcast, Prime Talk with Rodimus Prime, on the Castbox app. I almost said the podcast app, which is really stupid because there are multiple. They're very, very specific. Anyway, that being said, I'm the face of the 3 Count Mafia, but I'm also the greatest second place champion in 3 Count history, United States of War Machine MJ. And I will see you guys next time.